there, and welcome back to Weird Soda for Life. I usually open up these videos with like a song or a pun, and I really couldn't think of one this week. And to be honest, I kind of found that so depressing. Ah, soda, soda pressing, soda. You get it. Anyway, welcome back. We are trying two Pepsi sodas this week. I did manage to get the lime flavor, and by me, I mean friends of the channel and well, and friends of real life, Liz and John. Liz and John were grocery shopping earlier this week and spotted the lime in the store and texted me and Mr. Weird and were like, "Hey, have you found this yet?" I said no. So they purchased the bottle for me. And in fact, Liz stopped by my workplace and dropped it off for me this evening. So we are getting to try both. And how exciting is that? As we talk about sodas, obviously, I mean, there's always going to be like repeat, I was going to say repeat offenders. Um, and weirdly, though, Pepsi is not one of them. I mean, yes, I am aware that Pepsi owns Mountain Dew. And if we look at all the Mountain Dew videos I filmed over the years, there are so many. Um, but Pepsi, the flagship brand, we don't really get a lot of diversity, frankly, because it seems like every time that they tr- try it, it's a 50-50 chance on whether it'll succeed. We, I mean, I will say technically, I don't remember Crystal Pepsi, but I remember Crystal Pepsi. So Pepsi doesn't seem to like to kind of go and try the wacky soda game, right? Unlike Coca-Cola, who's just like out here making up weird things all the time. And kudos to Pepsi for like kind of knowing that that's like their wheelhouse, that they stay loyal, they stay true to whatever the concept of Pepsi is. Um, so which makes this a little bit more interesting. In the channel where we have folks and sodas that we've talked about before or makers. Usually in the first video, I tend to go through the history. Now, I actually have filmed a Pepsi video before, but it's very, very, very early days of the channel. Back when I was kind of just making like the essays and things for and taking a lot of photos. And then just if I needed an extra video to support what I was talking about, I throw it up on the channel, but it wasn't really like the main focus. Whereas now I do, if you follow me on Facebook, the essay that's in the description of this video also is on Facebook with photos because some folks like the images and the text, and some folks like to see my beautiful face as I try sodas that disappoint me. Um, anyway, since we haven't done a deep dive of Pepsi before, I kind of thought we'd, well, not we, but we're gonna do it. You're gonna learn about Pepsi today. um, Starting off with, if you do know anything about basic soda history, you already know that Pepsi's original name was not Pepsi. Um, Starting in 1893, a pharmacist, and if you've been with the channel, you know alarm bells are already ringing. Whenever a pharmacist gets into the soda game, it always has spurious claims about the health and the efficacy of the drink that they are about to sling at you. But anyway, 1893, Caleb Bradham lives in North Carolina. Pharmacist decides, you know what the world needs? Another carbonated beverage. And so he combines a lot of different things, but essentially his big ingredients are sugar, carbonated water, cola nut, just in case you didn't know why we call it like Coca-Cola and things like that, and a enzyme known as pepsin. So I think you can see the origin, except you're wrong. Because you know what this dude did? He was like, you know what, we're going to call this? We're going to call this soda after me. And so you think to yourself, okay, well, I've never heard of Caleb's Cola. And you're right, because that doesn't exist, or if it does, it's in somebody's basement like right now. This man went off and was like, you know what I'm calling this? Brad's drink. Sir, nobody's calling you Brad. Like, no, one of my last names is a person's name. It's a person's first name. And like nobody's out here like lopping that off and being like, "Hey there, Gar." Like that's not real. Why would you do that? Like anyway, so But he's like, this is what we're calling it. We're calling it Brad's drink, and everybody's gonna know it's me, Caleb, who that made Brad's drink. Um, so he goes with that. That's 1893. By 1898, however, he's kind of figured out that that doesn't really work. So he's like, got to make this more unique. How do I do this? At that point, he looks at pepsin and decides Pepsi, right? So 1898 is where we come and we call it Pepsi-Cola. Um, we're still not out of the woods yet because he then realizes that he can't really market it unless he gets the trademark. And there's already a soda in New Jersey called Pep Cola. Um, eventually, he waits him out and eventually gets to purchase it, like the rights to the name. And then from there, he and his company, Pepsi Cola, uh, incorporate in 1902, and then they are like off to the races, which feels like a little late to me in the soda game if we're looking like at older historical sodas, because as we've kind of talked, we see a lot of this starting in the 1880s, and they're usually doing whatever it is they're gonna do by the early 1900s, and they are taking off. This probably wasn't for the best. So he expands over 300 companies making Pepsi Cola. Um, but post World War One, they discover that a lot of the ways they bottle the soda are faulty, which makes sense. Um, and sugar prices are like all over the place because it's post World War One. You've got the Spanish flu, like markets and like the pipelines for things are just borked, right? Um, so in another getting ahead of the game, uh, I was gonna say Brad's drink. I keep wanting to call it Brad's drink now. I guess he was on to something. Um, essentially, he gets ahead of the game in the Great Depression and decides in 1923 that he is declaring bankruptcy. So, uh, so Bradham declares bankruptcy, sells his company, and the people who buy his company, another corporation, are like, absolutely not, sir. If you're the sort of person who names their soda after half of their last name, we do not need that sort of prowess in our company anymore because it's ours now. Neener, neener. Um, from that, uh, Caleb, like, essentially like shuffles off in eventually and dies in 1934, which still again feels very recent in soda history to think about like the history of people who are creating sodas like this, right? Um, as for the company that bought it, which I want to say Loft Incorporated, I don't know a lot about them. And again, I do a deep dive, but not too deep. They actually start like creating, having some innovation. For example, they create the 12-ounce bottle, right? So they're charging the same prices. By this point, it's like 1934, so we're deep in the Great Depression by this point. So they start by creating a bottle, 12-ounce bottle, where they sell Pepsi for the same price that others would sell their for 10 or 8 ounces. So that's like really cool. Um, and they also create a mascot called Pepsi Pete, which sounds creepy as hell. But I did go look, and it looks very sort of. It's a cop. He's a chubby cop in like some old school Keystone Cop outfits. Eh, the name was better than the concept anyway. Uh, but from there, they start doing this outreach, and then we're pretty close to World War II. World War II happens. Sugar kind of gets a breakdown, but everybody's suffering, right? But Pepsi still managed to keep their head afloat. Um, and then after that, that brings us to post World War II, where Pepsi really starts taking off. In the 50s, they finally go global, which is great, I guess. I mean, and then in the 60s, but them going global really allows them again to come back to start fighting again with Coca-Cola, right? Because Coca-Cola had mostly, by that point, kind of been unchecked. Though we did learn about the Green River soda, and there's other competitors, but Pepsi is, as you know, has had the staying power. Um, so we have that, and then since they're going head to head, by the 60s, Pepsi starts talking about how they're the Pepsi generation, right? So all the hippies are part of the Pepsi generation because Pepsi is modern, and I guess relatively speaking to Coca-Cola, it was modern. And then the 70s, 1975 brings the Pepsi Challenge. If you guys have ever listened to We Didn't Start the Fire, when Billy Joel starts singing about the Cola Wars. This is specifically the point that starts the Cola Wars, is that the Pepsi challenge had people blind taste testing both Coke and Pepsi and picking which one they liked, and majority picked Pepsi. However, it's a marketing campaign, so if the majority of those people had actually picked Coke, you know that that would have not flown. We would have never heard about this. The 80s brings again the aforementioned Crystal Pepsi in response to New Coke. So I mean, both of them were misfiring all over the place. In the 90s, that's about the time I remember. I remember Generation Next with the Spice Girls. But essentially, we bring us to, well, today, right? And again, Pepsi and Coca-Cola are fighting for market shares, uh, both of which have diversified into different avenues of like funding. But I've gone on way too long than I intended. So let's get to the real reason you're here. Soda time. Um, so both of the cover, both the models look about the same. I really do like the design, and if you're thinking to yourself that icon looks new, it is. They actually redesigned the Pepsi logo in 2023. There have been several designs before. I think this is very close to, or at least closest to the 1980s logos. But yeah, they redesigned this last year. As you can see, it gets the point across. It's Pepsi with peach because that's what it is. Um, the lime is the same, right? Again, you think I'd be better with these cameras. I've been at this for like almost 2 years now. But so the Pepsi lime is the same. I kind of like that the limes are cut in this one, and then the peach is like whole. It kind of gives it a little bit design, but honestly, other than like the different fruit, it looks the same. Because it is my channel, I get to decide which one I'm trying first, and I'm gonna do peach. So let's crack this open and see what we can like garner. Okay, so there is an underlying current of peach. It's a little bit drowned out by the original Pepsi scent. Um, and actually, the peach smell kind of smells the same as this drink I drink. It's a long drink, and they've come up with a peach variant, and it kind of smells a little bit like the peach that they use in that. Um, with that, that's okay. Um, it's Pepsi. There is peach in it. So kudos, the label matches the flavor. There is Pepsi in it, and there's peach in it, but the peach is not super heavy, or I guess rather it sort of is, but I guess I would describe it sort of like an Oreo. It's like you have Pepsi and then a layer of peach and then more Pepsi. It's not. It. I think maybe because peach is a sweet fruit to begin with, it doesn't cut through the Pepsi as well as we would like it to. This is say, and I get a little bit more of the peach in the aftertaste than I do in as it's going in. But that's meh, right? Eh. So let's hope that the lime is maybe a little more dynamic, right? So let's try this again. Ooh. Uh, okay, so that was very clear. Uh, let's see. Yeah. Okay. So unlike the peach, which was kind of like drowned out in the Pepsi smell, this, as evidence by the fact that it just tried to kill me, um, clearly smell the lime in this. You can clearly smell that cutting through the sweetness of the Pepsi, which kind of gives me hope for the flavor. So let's find out. Yeah, that's better. Okay. Um, the lime is not as tart in the Pepsi as I thought it would be, but it's there, and that's really what's more important. It's not to say again that the peach isn't there. The peach is there, but with the sweetness of the peach and the sweetness of the Pepsi, they kind of just get a little more muddled than I really like. Whereas the lime, you can taste it. Like you can taste the lime. Now it's artificial lime. It doesn't taste like the fruit. So if you were expecting like a crisp lime, this is not the one. But if you're expecting artificial lime flavor, this is the one. And if they say they put original or lime juice in it, well, they can tell you that all they want, but they've done something so it tastes more artificial. Um, but that is better. So I'm really glad that Liz and John found the lime for me. I think it's pretty obvious if you had to choose one, I would go for the lime if you can find it. Um, Again, I think both of these, well, actually, less the lime, but the peach in particular suffers from what we talked about last week, which is you're playing with the brand, right? And when you play with the brand, you can't go too far off script or else people will get turned off from the brand. Um, so I think in particular this week, the Pepsi Peach suffers from that. Um, the Pepsi Lime doesn't, um, because I think it really does play well with the sweetness. But I also feel obligated to point out that just like in a lot of things in the Pepsi Cola wars, Coca-Cola did it first. They've been having Coke, at least Diet Coke with lime out for a few years now. So they've had a little more time to get that formula right. But if you're gonna get one, get the lime. If you have an opportunity to get both, get both. But again, I say that mostly because they're easy to get. Um, so a hot soda summer, I really don't like that. Mediocre soda, no, hot, fine. You know what? Until I find a better name, hot soda summer is on. Um, and if you're ready to drink, get the lime. Next week, we are getting closer to 100 videos. And next week, in honor of that, for number 99, we are getting rid of a soda that has haunted me since perhaps soon after the beginning of this channel. I'm drinking the enchilada soda. It's time for the whole enchilada. We are trying it on the channel. It is a Lester's Fixins. I have a pretty terrible feeling about how this is going to go, but I'm doing it for y'all. So you're welcome. Until next time, drink weird and put the lime in the soda pop and drink it all up. Ah, that's right. 2 for 1 special. See you next time.